section on through to 183. This improvement's of Roberts Cutoff. We are going to have to acquire some property here. This is the one primary piece of real estate we're going to have to acquire. It's going to be expensive, but in order to do what we're trying to do and realign the road, we think it's worth spending the money and fixing that. And I think that's a huge opportunity to make improvement. Next, Yale and Mandarin. We are proposing a roundabout. I know there's going to be conversations again about that tonight. Our engineers have looked at this 50 different ways. It meets some very unique requirements from our office's perspective about roundabouts. We do not recommend a lot of roundabouts, but there are some circumstances at this intersection that suggest that it will work and work very well. We have a very low volume street in Yale, and that's one of the issues. We have a relatively low volume street on Meandering, but what this will do, by low volume, I mean on Yale, probably less than 500 cars a day. I think it's close to 300. Meandering, it's in the low thousands, 2,000 to 3,000. These are low volumes by any of our reasonable standards that we do roadway planning. But the thing that a roundabout does here is it calms traffic and it slows traffic. I have spent approximately 4 days out on Meandering Road in the last 3 months, typically for 2 or 3 hours at a time. Some of them we've spent with Councilman Howe in front of his business. We recognize the big problem in the corner, and it's amazing that people travel as fast as they do, as rough as that pavement is, but the speeds are way too fast.
Right.
And the thing that a roundabout will do for us, it will allow the traffic, it will force the traffic to slow dramatically down, probably to speeds of 5 miles an hour or less to navigate this. But at the same time, it doesn't force traffic to come to a four-way stop, where it doesn't need to very often, because we don't have a lot of cross traffic on Yale. It also sits that Yale does not sit, I guess, what's the right term, Jill?
Now it's offset.
Offset. It's on an offset alignment. That's difficult, and so a lot of the examples, and I looked at a whole bunch of roundabout examples, I asked our staff to give me the last 2 weeks, in cases where you have offset intersections, in other words, Yale does not line up squarely, this is a very good way to handle that traffic through an offset intersection. We do think that there's a lot of strategies we're proposing to handle pedestrian and traffic in the intersection as a roundabout that will work. I met with our roundabout, I met with our Sustainable Development Bike Ped people again today. I ran the whole scenario by them again. I said, given these traffic volumes, given this intersection characteristics, are you satisfied that a roundabout will be safe? They said yes. If you do adequate signing and marking, it should be safe for the traffic volumes and speeds that we're talking about. In fact, I'd encourage everybody, go out on the internet, read everything you can about roundabouts. There's tons of information about there. In the aggregate, it says that generally roundabouts are 30 to 40% safer than stop signs or signalized intersections, and it's always because slower speeds. Now, I do want to stress, there's a lot of places where we don't recommend roundabouts, where there's a lot of speed, where there's multiple lanes, where there's opportunities for higher speed crashes. We don't think they're a good idea. We do think in this particular circumstance that it will work. It will be different for a couple weeks. Drivers are going to have to get used to this idea of slowing down to 5 miles an hour and just taking your time to get through the intersection. You basically just approach it. If there's somebody in the roundabout, you wait for them to pass and then you enter. But we do think that people will adapt. It's a safe, it will lower your speeds, it will calm your traffic, and we think it's a good application. Is it the only application that will work? No. I'm not going to stand up here tonight and tell you that it's not. We can do it with four-way stop sign. I don't think it's warranted. I don't think you have to have it in this case. We recommended that the city run out and put a four-way stop sign there now, and I'm thankful that you did, because the speeds are just too fast. There's too many kids. It wasn't very many, but it was too many kids trying to cross that street, and it was a total haphazard situation as to whether or not traffic was going to stop for them or not. In fact, Paul and I were were literally scared, and the councilman was there too. I mean, we were like, maybe we should stop traffic to make sure these kids can get across the street.
Every day.
Every day. We think this will address that.
We ask questions now, Joe?
No, let's wait till the presentation and then we'll...
The street does not warrant a signalized intersection. It just doesn't. There's just not enough traffic there, and quite frankly, it'd be irresponsible for me to suggest that it's warranted and burden the city with the cost and expense of installing or maintaining the traffic signals. It would be a huge financial burden to the city that, quite frankly, we don't see as warranted.
When did you change your mind about all that?
Let's let them get through the presentation and then...
Well, I've just heard some, okay.
Yeah, let's do the presentation. No, you're...
I'll be glad to respond to that.
Okay.
So, next slide, Joe, I think. This is another example of where a roundabout works. Really because you have a very convoluted intersection with lots of different offset angles to approach. We are trying to close one street to make this work. We think this will clean up what is today a very challenging, difficult situation. Probably don't need to spend a lot of time on that. I don't think anybody's ever disagreed with us that that's a bad idea. But it will make traffic flow in that location much, much better, and it will be much safer. And again, these are not high-volume cross streets, or we wouldn't be recommending them at this location either. Next slide, Joe. Okay, so this is the existing cross structure, and we're going to try to do some additional renderings to maybe give a better feel, but this is basically what's out there today. We've got, 12-foot wide lanes, 11-foot wide outside travel lanes, no sidewalks or bicycle facilities. You're all very familiar with the corridor. This is a very simplistic drawing. What we're proposing is this. So reducing the lanes to two 11-foot lanes on the outside with a continuous 12-foot lane down the middle. A 10-foot wide shared use path on the north side, and a 6-foot wide sidewalk on the south side. A shared use path means it can be used by pedestrians and cyclists. We think that that's probably going to be recreational cyclists. Most cyclists that are commuters don't want to be on paths, would rather be out in the street. They have the right to do that. They're traveling at the same rate of traffic and can flow with traffic, that's fine. The most dramatic thing I'm going to say at the podium tonight about what we're doing is on this slide, which is basically the fact that we're putting this road inside the current envelope of where the street is. And when Paul and I were out there and really took the realization that, oh my gosh, the actual pavement is going to be 6 feet narrower on each side of what's out there today, this road is going to look dramatically different, and it's going to feel dramatically different. Taking that much more pavement away is going to give this street a feel of a neighborhood street. We're required by federal law to provide bicycle and pedestrian access. We spent a lot of time with the folks in River Oaks about what's the right combination of sidewalk and trail. I think this is a great one. I think this idea of having a 10-foot shared use path gives the opportunity for families to get out and walk, jog, have their kids with them, ride their bikes. It's really going to be an amenity for the corridor that I think the city of River Oaks will benefit from. And of course, I think sidewalks is a good way to get up and down the street. And again, every time I'm in River Oaks, which now is about once every 2 weeks, I drive the corridor. And I always look at this from the perspective of how would I feel about this corridor if I owned a house on this street. And I can unequivocally tell you I would feel great about this road. I don't think it's going to negatively impact any of your properties. I think it's going to make you feel good about the street, and I actually think it will increase the value of your properties. It's going to feel much more like a neighborhood street. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jill, and we're going to talk about where we're at in the process, and then we'll talk about questions and comments, and we're very open to anybody's questions.
As Dan mentioned, the virtual public hearing just recently ended. March 11th was the last day for comments. That public hearing window was open for a couple of weeks, and so you were able to review all the project documents, provide input, provide comment. So, as you can see up here, that's the first line up here, our virtual public hearing. As a result of that, we collect public involvement comments, compile those, respond to those. That becomes part of the environmental document. Once All of our environmental reports are reviewed